For those born under the sign of Scorpio, there comes a period when cosmic energies offer more than just a mundane opportunity to improve your life. While each horoscope for 2025 portends different trends and potential prosperity, the current moment is not just another chance. This is a truly momentous time, when the usual world order begins to change irreversibly. The Serpentine, the mysterious 13th sign of the zodiac, is already actively rewriting the lines of destiny, and this is not happening somewhere in the misty future, but right now, in the present. This is not a metaphor or figurative expression. Astronomical reality has indeed undergone a fundamental change. A new, powerful link has suddenly entered the zodiacal circle. And with its arrival, the world acquires 7 fateful marks. These marks are not ephemeral symbols, but are concrete, tangible points of power that can influence the most important areas of human existence: financial well-being, deep emotional ties, unshakable self-confidence, inner peace and true freedom. Remarkably, all of these benefits can be acquired simultaneously, rather than one at a time. As Jupiter, the planet of great opportunity and expansion, approaches the mysterious sign of Serpentine, the veils of secrecy begin to open, and everything that was previously hidden becomes accessible. However, this access is open only to those who are really ready to accept the challenge of fate. The main thing is not to miss this unique moment. The celestial spheres will not wait, and this fateful period requires maximum vigilance. So, the unfolding of these destiny markers begins, and the first of them is, the art of being yourself. On June 13th, Mars in Leo will square Uranus in Taurus. This astrological event hits the Scorpio sign suddenly, without warning, like a lightning strike. Mars, the planet of action and personal will, which often acts as the prime mover for members of this sign, is in fierce opposition to Uranus, the cosmic symbol of sudden revelations and revealing truth. There is no advance preparation, no opportunity for rehearsal or delay. This cosmic configuration simply rips away all masks and coverings. Those who until now have been following other people's scripts and rules will feel the inner brake that has been holding them back suddenly fail, pushing them to take decisive action. Those who for years hid their true nature behind a facade of pretense, will face unbearable fatigue, reaching physical malaise, demanding to shed the false shell. And those who carefully guarded their true individuality from prying eyes, suddenly realize that to continue to live in such dissonance becomes absolutely unbearable. Serpentine is not prone to softness or indulgence. His energy ruthlessly destroys comfortable, but false images, demonstrating that to put their own life on hold is a luxury that representatives of this sign can no longer afford. The sign of Scorpio is known to have a profound understanding of the processes of transformation, both bodily and spiritual. Through this inner wisdom, representatives of this sign acquire a state in which there is no need to create an artificial image, it is enough to live in perfect harmony with their true nature. But the nature of Scorpio, as we know, absolutely does not tolerate pretense or falsity. They do not belong to those who could be called ordinary or normal in the conventional sense. And so, since June 13th of this year, a unique opportunity, a kind of official permission to be exactly what they are, with all their characteristic sharp corners, has finally opened up for them. This is manifested in their peculiar logic, in the strength of their desires, and in their complete rejection of any meaningless or foolish games. Thus, the first of the designated marks becomes of key importance. If it is ignored, the others simply cannot be activated. The whole process begins with a decisive choice in favor of authenticity, without any external scenery, without agonizing over, what if something goes wrong, and without worrying about, what others will say. This state is not so much about freedom as it is about regaining full control over one's own destiny. Moving on. What follows is the second mark associated with the concepts of revenge and justice. On June 17th, the planet Mars makes its transition into the sign of Virgo. Well, but the representatives of the sign of Scorpio know exactly what it really means to conceal. For them it is not a hidden offense, but a clearly defined goal, not excruciating pain, but a valuable resource for future actions. The blow dealt to them is never forgotten, it is not just stored in memory, but methodically accumulated into potential. And now, with the transition of their ruler, the planet Mars, in the sign of Virgo, comes that long-awaited, cold and rational window of opportunity. In this period, Scorpios will finally not give in to boiling emotions, and will act very clearly, thoughtfully and coolly, sometimes even with a touch of cynicism, but at the same time completely devoid of emotional impulses and any regrets about their decisions. The most important aspect is that the position of Mars in Virgo endows a man with the qualities of a skillful surgeon, and the mystical serpentine, in turn, hands him a sharp scalpel. This tool is used not to accomplish emotional revenge, driven by momentary impulses, but solely to restore the violated justice. There is no room for sudden outbursts of anger. On the contrary, all actions are dictated by a cold-blooded calculation that arouses genuine fear in those who once dared to betray, deceive or humiliate. Now it is they who, having full control over the situation, decide whether to finally crush the offender or grant him forgiveness. Some of them will prefer to strike back, returning the pain exactly to the right address, without unnecessary details, through revelations, exposure of the truth, hard facts and decisive action. For example, this may manifest itself in tearing the mask off an unscrupulous boss, in publishing true information about a former partner, or in repaying a debt not with empty words, but with concrete actions. For the first time in a long time they feel that they are not victims of circumstances, but a full-fledged enforcement system. Others choose the way of handing over the whole situation to karma. This choice is not due to naive kindness, but to deep maturity and understanding that the universe has much more sophisticated and profound ways of destruction than those available to man. And it is their silence that becomes most terrifying to their adversaries. For where once they desperately sought answers and explanations, now there is absolute indifference. And the indifference inherent in Scorpio, like a penetrating cold, which is impossible to survive. There is a third way. This is the choice of those who suddenly realize that all the desire for revenge burned them out from the inside, that the thirst for payback has become the only dominant emotion, leaving no room for anything else. It is at this point that the true power of the serpentine is activated. They come to the realization that they don't have to take revenge to feel powerful, and they don't have to forgive to find true freedom. They simply make the decision to no longer waste their precious lives on the past, for they realize that they have already risen above it. Whichever of these paths they choose, the outcome is always the same: the inner fire that used to burn them from within will finally subside. The heavy stone will fall from their chest, from their heart. And for the first time in a long time they will be able to just sleep peacefully, without obsessive monologues in their heads, without nurturing plans of revenge, without fantasizing about how things could have been. That's it. This stage is over, the matter is closed. They regain full control over themselves, and that is where their true power lies. Mark 3. Love. On June 21st, Mars in Virgo trines the Moon in Taurus. Representatives of the sign of Scorpio are known to be capable of deep and all-consuming feelings. Their love can be so strong that it reaches awe, to a real obsession, sometimes erasing the boundaries of self-control. However, it is Scorpions better than others are familiar with how quickly sincere feelings can turn into a tense struggle for survival, where a person feels not an equal partner, but rather a prisoner of circumstances. In such relationships, every declaration of love sometimes serves only as a screen for hidden manipulations, and true intimacy requires an exorbitant price: their own individuality and wholeness. But the current period brings significant changes. The astrological interaction of Mars in Virgo and the Moon in Taurus forms an exceptionally rare constellation in which emotional manifestations cease to be an instrument of influence. There is a noticeable restructuring of the planetary energy affecting Scorpios. The usual tension is replaced by a sense of stability, and anxiety gives way to sober reality. In this process actively interferes with the influence of the serpent, acting not as a traditional Cupid, but rather as a kind of filter. He mercilessly cuts off everything superficial and false, clearing the way to those relationships where there is no need to fight for your place, and it is enough just to be yourself and sincerely love. For the first time in a long time Scorpios begin to feel that peace and quiet in the couple is not a harbinger of trouble, and represent a natural, harmonious state. There is no longer a need to check other people's messengers, ferret out ulterior motives or make dramatic scenes. There is a person next door who is free of games and conventions. There is no more need to pay a part of yourself for warmth and acceptance. No one puts Scorpio in front of the choice, be comfortable or you'll be alone. Now there is a companion nearby who does not strip them of their identity, but rather accepts them for who they are. This challenge is key, and the Scorpio finally stops breaking themselves by adjusting to other people's expectations. They stop being an object to be re-educated. This profound change is felt instantly. For those in romantic relationships, a realization finally comes: true love is not a feat, nor does it require constant struggle or endless tension. On the contrary, it is a safe space where one can breathe fully, allow oneself to be in a bad mood without demanding explanations, and remain completely oneself without fear of being abandoned. At the same time, those who have experienced separation and loss begin to deeply understand, loneliness is often preferable to falsity. It is much better to be in harmony with oneself, even if it means the absence of a partner, than to find oneself once again in a stifling cage, where warmth and approval are only given in exchange for strictly defined, correct, behavior. The period from late June to early August opens a unique window of opportunity to make new acquaintances that will not take away vital energy. Special attention should be paid to these encounters. All new connections will be subjected to careful filtering, and this selection will be carried out by none other than the Serpentine. In the end, only that which is genuine and contains no lies will remain. Other contacts will be eliminated by themselves, and it will happen so imperceptibly that a person will not even have time to realize it, because he will be completely absorbed in the process of transformation and cognition of the new self. The fourth mark is devoted to an integral aspect of our life: money. How can we do without it? On June 26, there will be an exact sextile between the Sun in Cancer and Mars in Virgo. For Scorpios with financial means, this is not simply a demonstration of wealth or status, but rather a manifestation of deep control. This control manifests itself in the ability to not ask anyone's permission, to not have to explain their financial decisions, and to not depend on other people's opinions or circumstances when it comes to what they can afford. It is in this financial autonomy that the powerful force of the new label is activated. The astrological aspect formed between the Sun and a person's own Mars, which is their ruler, marks a turning point where financial matters are no longer a source of worry. Instead, cash is transformed into an effective tool, and the influence of Serpentine gives a deep understanding of how to direct this flow so that it is not wasted. It is not uncommon for capital preservation to be more challenging than its initial acquisition. Person born under the sign of Scorpio and under the active influence of the serpent, gains the ability to independently determine to whom and what to provide. This decision stems not from arrogance, but from a deep inner confidence. If before financial prosperity was achieved at the cost of struggle, survival or compromise with conscience, now before such a person opens a completely different way. Thanks to his increased clarity, he avoids investing in those who seek only to use his resources, refuses to save those who only drain his strength, and stops spending on those who are accustomed only to taking without giving anything in return. The period covering June and July represents a unique window of opportunity when investment decisions are highly recommended. This is especially true when it comes to investing in so-called earthly matters, purchasing a home, buying land, providing quality nutrition, taking care of health. All these aspects bring true stability, not fleeting success or ephemeral illusions. On these auspicious days it is advisable to launch projects where one has full control over the process from beginning to end. Scorpio by nature does not accept dependence, and now there is a real chance to finally get out from under the influence of other people's games. Categorically not welcome spontaneous spending, especially those imposed from the outside. If someone tries to convince an individual to invest in someone else's dream, it can lead to serious financial losses. The influence of the Serpentine activates the sphere of personal responsibility. The person faces a clear choice: either he holds his money firmly in his own hands, or risks giving them to those who will later disappear without a trace. Label 5. Freedom. This is a truly sweet word that takes on special significance on July 7th, when Mars in Virgo is conjunct Lilith. This is when one of the most profound and personal triggers for Scorpio is activated. It is about the inner need to be outside of imposed systems, and it is not a tribute to passing fashions, but rather an existential necessity. Lilith, in this context, points to areas of life where one no longer wants or will be subject to other people's rules. And the serpentine here is not crying out with a request, but a strong demand: free yourself from all that is not created by you and does not serve your true purposes. This applies to work, where the individual is relegated to a mere function, relationships in which the individual has been assigned a role, or family ties that oblige to an endless game of propriety. From the 7th of July such a pattern ceases to apply. Scorpio does not feel obliged to adjust, even if he is offered generous bonuses for silence or compromise. Despite the outward correctness of the situation, Scorpio, driven by the powerful energy of the serpentine, will no longer pretend to be comfortable. He will simply get up and leave, without unnecessary explanations and dramatic scenes, because any attempt to squeeze him into someone else's template is now perceived as an act of violence. And, of course, there will be surprised faces asking, "Have you lost your mind? So much effort and resources have been invested in you." The inner response will be simple and unwavering: "I don't have to tolerate what doesn't belong to me." This is not a manifestation of rebellion at all, but rather a coming to one's own norm, to a life aligned with one's inner convictions, not with the convenience of others. And even those closest to him will not be able to hold him back if they try to mold his personality to suit their needs. Label 6. Happiness. July 20th, the conjunction of Mars in Virgo with the South Node. Representatives of the sign of Scorpio, known for their depth and insight, never had illusions about superficial well-being. They are not attracted to glossy images from commercials or far-fetched plots of television series, for they are all too aware of the true value of their own existence and life path. Now, however, a new lease of life is beginning in which happiness does not require debilitating suffering or special merit, it simply appears as a natural, effortless possibility. They wake up and, for the first time, do not feel the usual aversion to the beginning of a new day. This is not because everything around them has become perfect, but because the environment becomes measured, steady, devoid of sudden disruptions, dramatic collisions, and the eternal battle for one's place in the sun. True happiness is not that all dreams come true, but that nothing undermine the inner harmony. And here, finally, the representatives of this sign come to this turning point. Mars with the South Node indicates, the time has come, the long-awaited time when it is necessary to free yourself from the burden of what the sign's representatives unconsciously carried with them, ostensibly as insurance or just in case. This may be outdated promises, long-held grudges, as well as previous, sometimes overstated, expectations of their own person. The serpentine says bluntly, none of this works anymore. True happiness for them is the absence of the inner need to pretend to be someone else. They are already inherently self-sufficient, and everything that previously disturbed their inner peace is now falling away, like the shed skin of a snake, symbolizing renewal. And they do not cling to the past, do not even look back, because it becomes much easier and freer to move forward. Label 7. Fears. On July 28th comes the opposition of Jupiter in Cancer and Pluto in Capricorn. It is during this period that the final balance of power occurs. Pluto, who acts as shadow master and second ruler, comes into opposition with Jupiter, the ruler of Serpentine. This is not just an ordinary astrological aspect, it is the culminating, final blow to the fears that have ruled over a person for years, and sometimes for a lifetime. We are not talking about external threats, but about internal, subtle, quiet fears that are stealthily undermining from within. It is these hidden fears that turn out to be the most destructive. Everything a person was so afraid of losing has either long since left his life, or turned out not to be worth the effort and affection he devoted to it. People who once seemed indispensable are gradually leaving, and one finds that he is able to survive their absence by continuing on his way. The job on which one's entire existence seemed to depend was replaced by a new one, bringing with it a sense of ease and freedom. The man realized, What was perceived as a complete collapse and the end, in fact, was only a powerful restart. And it is at this moment of destiny that he reaches the peak of his inner strength, as he becomes completely invulnerable to fear-based manipulation. He no longer succumbs to pressure, no longer feels oppressive guilt, and finally ceases to believe in shoulds imposed by anyone. Most importantly, the person honestly recognizes that there is no one around whom he or she can trust absolutely and completely, and this discovery does not cause him or her suffering, because he or she has become a reliable support for himself or herself. This mark is the last of its kind. Beyond it begins a completely different round of movement, a movement without fear, without the need to hide, without illusions. This means the advent of a truly free and finally happy time for man. So, the 7 marks in question are not just calendar marks, but rather key turning points at which each individual has the opportunity to either take control of his or her destiny or remain in the old way of existence. During 2 millennia the world functioned according to the former astrological system where the 13th sign of the Serpentine was absent. Age of Pisces, dominating in this period, was based on principles of pity and sacrifice. During this long period of time the volume of accumulated energies and events exceeded the limits of traditional astrological representation. Originally the ecliptic consisted of 12 signs, each of which occupied 30 degrees. Now, however, the space of zodiacal degrees has undergone an expansion. It is these additional 30 days that form a unique window for the emergence of the 13th sign, the Serpentine. It is in November of this year that an irreversible process is set in motion that can no longer be stopped. The planet Jupiter enters its sign of Serpenter. This event is not an ordinary astrological transit, but a true initiation of a new paradigm. The age of Aquarius, hitherto latent, is gaining full power and influence. As a consequence of these grandiose changes, all zodiac signs receive updated astrological attributes. It is noteworthy that Scorpio will be among the first to experience these transformations, because their nature is endowed with a unique ability to see what is hidden from the perception of others. Future dates associated with Scorpio fall between November 23 and November 29. Despite the fact that this time period seems insignificant, this fact does not mean that the representatives of the sign in any way moved or changed their original affiliation. On the contrary, it indicates that around this sign crystallizes a special area characterized by other vibrational frequencies, expanded capabilities and a qualitatively different level of consciousness. However, one should be extremely cautious in approaching this new reality. It is not advisable to invade this area on one's own without having an individual natal chart, as otherwise individuals risk only getting lost or facing disorientation. It is fundamentally important not to attempt to transform the existing reality alone, because even the luminaries of astrology have not yet comprehended it in its entirety. At the moment, their main task is to accept these 7 marks, harmoniously integrate them into their own personality and daily life, and then, based on them, to build further movement forward. It should be remembered that the influence of the Serpentine gives not mystical magic, but true power. And the possession of power is invariably associated with enormous responsibility, especially for such strong natures, as representatives of the sign of Scorpio. And on this path, they will undoubtedly need a lot of luck.